Don't scab for the bosses, don't listen to their lies. Us poor folks haven't got a chance unless we organize. Which side are you on?
We are
Which
recording.
side are you on?
What is up?
Which side
This is
are you
Remarks.
on?
It's a podcast.
It's a podcast that we do. I'm Phoebe.
I'm Tayler, and we're really good at introing the podcast.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. I'm maybe just the slightest bit hungover, so my intro game's not on. I feel like.
No worries. I mean, I feel like it'll just add to the character of the cast.
True.
If you
The
will.
general bummerness of this episode.
Just like, fuck. Anyway.
Yeah, it's another bummer-sode this week, you guys.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's gonna be a little bit of a bummer. I feel like last week's was kind of an uplifting episode, though.
Yeah,
So,
I would say yes. We've got a good ebb and
Hopefully-
flow.
yeah, hopefully you're still riding the high from like that episode.
The high? Get
The
it?
high, yeah.
Hey, was that the joke?
I got because marijuana. That's the joke. Weed is cool. I don't personally smoke weed, but I support everyone who does.
Yeah, but it's cool if you do. Anyway, we're going to talk about prisons this week.
Yeah, prison system. Do you want me to go first? Since
Yes.
we got the historic.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think you should go ahead and take it.
Yeah, so we were just one of the first funny story to intro it, I guess. Phoebe and I were at a little party shindig type B, and we were
On substances.
we may have been on a substance or two, and I was like, Phoebe, I really want to get your thoughts on the U.S. prison system. And she was like,
Just,
okay.
like, out of the blue, and then we
Yeah.
were like, for like,
Yeah,
way
just
too
talking
long.
about it. It's good stuff.
Yep.
But anyway, I'm going to go over some of the history of the prison system and kind of what went into it here. I believe this is going to be a two-parter episode, so should be good. I feel like you probably prepared more than I did, but
I mean, I don't know, you have a lot of pages. I'm pretty stoked about it.
that's true. That is true. We'll see what's up.
Yeah.
The who wins the most prepared.
The research game.
But yeah, so starting it off here, the very first prisons in America were very reminiscent of 1500s workhouses and the traditional prisons used by Britain, such as the Massachusetts Castle Island Penitentiary. It was a military fort during the 1600s, and after King Philip's War ended, was used to sell Native Americans into the slave trade because America. Love that. That's kind of like the earliest signs of, I guess, what you could call a prison. It definitely
Sure.
wasn't like anything that would be seen as like a modern day prison. And I mean, the weird thing is like when we had first colonized here, like, it was, or I guess when we had first like revolted from the English, it was all about like personal liberties and whatnot. So it's like prisons were kind of an afterthought in most of everything. Like they were kind of just like, well, we don't need prisons, and like I mean I agree with them in that area, but like, they kind of let that one slip. Anyway, early New England had a mix of letting colonies and states decide what to do with prisoners. It also had a religious influence as well. A population boom led to some reforming of the system in the eastern states. So yeah, like initially it was very much like your state can kind of do whatever, and then also similar to like, around this time in up until the American Revolution, it was, the church still had a really big grasp on like what the penalties were for people, and then like the state would usually kind of follow through with whatever that was. But it just depends on the state. This reform saw many states actually ease up on the harshness of punishments. Pennsylvania, for instance, reformed that only robbery and burglary and first-degree murder were punishable by death. Other than, I think, first-degree murder. So pretty progressive stuff. Only killing people if they were burglars instead of just. And again, it's a little bit tricky because there wasn't any like set system at this time.
Right.
So like saying like, oh, this is what would happen to you if you did this, what isn't necessarily easy to do up until they like kind of cemented more rules into place. Because like, you know, in the earliest times, it was like if someone tried to steal from you, you'd probably just shoot them or something.
Yeah,
like,
or cut their hand off or whatever.
Or things like that, like whatever it was. And people kind of settled their own disputes. Which, again, I don't think is a terrible idea. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you should be shooting people here and there, but the decrease in capital punishment meant that other forms of punishment were now required to take its place. Longer prison sentences were stated, leading to, in the late 1700s, most states erecting their first federal-run prisons.
Here we go. Everybody's favorite.
Yeah, getting those federal prisons erected. Real good. Just wanted to say erected again for the third time. Auburn State Prison was the first in the 1800s to instate practices of rehabilitation instead of leaving prisoners to rot in a cell. The people of the time thought that they could. The people of the time thought that they could change him. That was a joke. I just misread it. They thought they could change him. Which, you know, so that was nice. It wasn't just like, you know, an empty cell that you were just thrown into and you were left there to just die. Yeah. They were like, yeah, maybe we can like change people's behaviors. Or
wow,
whatever.
crazy idea.
Crazy idea. Just
try to help people so they don't commit crimes anymore.
Yeah, insane. Weird. The idea of the prison was to isolate, teach obedience, and use labor as a means for production through inmates. Legal slavery is what we would call this today, but at the time, slavery was actually legal, so I guess it wouldn't.
True,
We shouldn't be surprised.
They would just call it slavery.
They would just call it slavery again or something.
Slavery again. Slavery 2.0.
Yeah. And there's like it's interesting. I'll kind of get more into it maybe in the next episode, but there's like a really big emphasis on isolation, like in the sense that like you had to take them out of society and you had to, because like a lot of times, you know, people didn't necessarily know what to do at this time, so they're like, oh, well, we can like make them have, you know, required manual labor, and where they would maybe even still live in their house and do things. They would just live in the house of the individual that was that they were doing the labor for, or you know, some kind of facility for, you know, the company, whatever it was that they were doing the labor for.
Sure.
And there was a little bit later there came this push of like isolation versus not isolation, meaning like, should we isolate these people so that we can do like a rehabilitation program, like, you know, even just like what we would call like a prison, or should we do more of like this idea of like labor to atone for their sins or whatever it is, you know, or again, should we even have like some kind of labor or some kind of like rehabilitation program, or should it just be, you know, like rotting in a cell? So again, a lot was kind of up in the air around this period, the Revolutionary period, into like the late 1700s to early 1800s. Not too much was set in stone. A new Pennsylvanian model arose, which included all the same tenants, but also isolated the prisoners, putting them in separate cells and making them eat alone, which might be some of the early signs of like isolation as a punishment, which I know you were getting into.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the thing, is like they were just trying a lot of different shit. They're like, should we try having them eat alone? Should we try having them eat together? They're
like, what do we do with these people?
What's the deal? A bummer, honestly. Like, I don't know. I really feel like they should have had more of an idea, but again, they were just kind of like, well, this is our country and you can't tell me what to do unless I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like, if you're going to create an entire nation, like, I don't know, maybe plan some fucking shit out,
maybe
dude.
Figure some shit out. I know there was a lot to figure out.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. I mean, this is not even this whole episode, but like, I just feel like there was a lot of shit with America that, like, to me seems like very basic shit that maybe should have been, like, thought of.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I don't know. It's interesting too because, like, and this is a tangent, absolutely, but
please.
With, like, the founding of America, I've thought about it. It's like America was established in a time where there was still kings and queens that ruled entire nations. And, like, so I get, like, how at the time, like, this, you know, Republican government, like a republic government, was, like, this new progressive thing. Like, oh, we don't have, like, an actual king.
Yeah.
And whatnot. But it's, like, now we've hit the point where, like, kings no longer exist unless you're fucking England.
Yeah.
And even then it's like...
Which, like, the king doesn't do
they
anything.
They don't do anything,
anyway. Yeah. It's just a title.
Just a title, and they just have a lot of money.
Yeah.
But, which makes... I mean, that really what makes people kings in America, too.
True.
Right?
That is true.
But, like, it just is funny to me because it's like... Why is it such a wild concept to think that, like, oh, maybe some kind of more socialist... communist. Eventually, obviously, the idea would be anarchist, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, like, some kind of thing like that wouldn't be able to work. Like, you know, 200 years ago, people didn't think that we could have a we could survive without a king, you know?
Fucking exactly.
It's just so stupid.
And it's like, okay, so we've been doing this now for, you know, however fucking long America's been around, I don't know. Hundreds of years, and it's like, you're like, nope, this is it. We're not going to try anything else.
This piece of paper that was written 200 years ago, this is how we got to do it.
By a bunch of old white dudes. Nope, we're still, this is it.
Can't change. And I guess they've changed a few things in it.
Sure.
But, like...
Like, the basic
yeah, they're like, I guess we should let, like, women vote and black people not be enslaved.
Yeah, yeah.
Just the, you know, real progressive stuff. But before we go further with the U.S. prison system, let's talk about workhouses. So,
yes.
Basically, England at the time and still today hated poor people. And, like, it was literally a crime to be poor. Like, and I mean, I guess they don't hate them as much today, but, like, idleness is what they called it.
Oh,
and,
my God.
It would end up, if you were idle, if you were poor, if you were too poor and they didn't like looking at you, basically, you would end up in a workhouse. Around the 1500s, there was a large movement of writers, philosophers supporting enslavement rather than death. So again, super progressive. And they were like, well, these people that suffer from this idleness, you know, heavy air quotes, we don't want them to just die. We need to find out how they can
we exploit them.
How can we exploit them and make them willing to slave their lives away for a corporation, you know?
Yeah. Well, we'll kill you otherwise. So weird. It sounds like the society we live in right now.
Exactly. And I didn't write too many of these down here, but like, I know some of the stories from, like, workhouses are absolutely awful.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it would be a lot of single parents, single mothers with children, sometimes orphans that just would end up in workhouses. Obviously, rampant sexual abuse, rampant physical abuse. Like, not good things. And that's another thing is, like, children would end up in workhouses because, like, again, if your parents are too poor to feed you, it's like, where else are you gonna go?
I mean, I guess, yeah.
No one wants to look at you on the street, so yeah, because it would make them feel bad if they had to see a poor person, and so, you know, you don't want to make the aristocrats in Britain feel bad.
I want to bum them out.
The only thing I like, I don't know if I like it more. The only thing that I like equally as much to shitting on America is shitting on England.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
oh yeah.
I'm with
Fuck
you on
England.
that.
But back to this, that's kind of what the workhouses were like. It was, and then again, it was kind of similar in some ways to that, like enslavement or imprisonment to work for, you know, whatever, to pay off your affliction or whatever it was. But,
sure.
But post-Revolutionary War brought a stunted economy as well as an increase in population and immigration. And as we all know, in economic times of trial, crime starts to increase.
Right.
In the late 1700s, people began to worry about a criminal class, heavy air quotes there too, of people. And it was people invading their cities, which again is classist and racist.
Uh-huh.
But it was a lot of like, and especially moving into like the early 1800s, it was a lot of like racism that was happening towards like freed black people.
Right.
Again, as cities get bigger and economic troubles start to happen, especially with a super boom in population.
Yeah.
The cities are going to be where the most concentration of people are, therefore the most crime.
Right.
The general public wasn't also big on public executions and banishments, which was a thing that happened up to that point.
Banishments?
Yeah, just being like, well, and also like at this point too, like there was the federal government, but states had a lot of like say in their own prison system, which is less so now. I don't exactly know. It might be less so in some areas, but like, so a state would be like, oh, we're going to banish this person to another state or another territory.
Huh.
But then people would be like, well, wouldn't they just do...
Yeah.
Because then like the state that's getting them is like, no, we don't want this criminal that you threw to us. Like, like don't... And like, I mean, it makes sense. It's like, rehabilitate your own... your own criminals or whatever. But, hey, Moonshine...
Moonshine's being real cute today,
I know,
guys.
Sorry, I just had to pet my cat. Mascot of the pod.
Yeah, she's here just swirling around our feet.
True. We should drop a picture of your pet if you want to share.
Oh, I should. I will. I have a dog, Tonks.
Tonks.
She's so cute.
Tonks is the love of my life, actually.
Oh, Tayler.
Sorry to my boyfriend.
Tonks is number one. Justin is a close number two.
True. But anyway, so yeah, that was the banishments. Anyway, back to prison. And then public executions were also a thing that the timeline is a little bit tricky because, again, things are happening in communities up to different points. I feel like public executions were more of like a 1600s to like... It was like more when we were underneath like British rule still.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, people didn't necessarily like seeing people get executed in like the town square or whatever.
It's something we have not in common with the French.
Yeah. The French love that shit.
French fucking love public executions.
Honestly, like, it is kind of funny throughout history, like, how many times people have just been like, yeah, I want to see that guy get mauled by a lion. Like,
yeah, the fucking
sick.
Roman Colosseum thing. Like, human beings are crazy.
Sounds fucking tight. Like,
I want to see this guy fight for his fucking life against a literal lion.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe controversial opinion. Maybe that was the way to do it. It's like, if you commit a crime and you can fight a lion.
Fight a lion.
Then you get out of it.
New idea, prison reform idea, lion fighting.
Yeah, because then it's like, any crime that you're going to commit, you just have to be sure that you can beat a lion. And then it's like you didn't commit a crime at all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway. Because of this, hard labor incarceration became the preferred method of criminal punishment, again, into like the 1700s after the Revolution and whatnot. By the end of the 1830s, penitentiaries and asylums became the move to focus on reform of prisoners rather than just laborers. So that was, again, moving into the 1830s. So they were just like making people work, throwing them in like shitty prison cells.
Right.
And up until that point, but then that's when the penitentiary came around and the asylum, which obviously I feel like most people know that like asylums for mentally disabled people were not very cash money back then.
Not at all.
Not at all. Still, I mean, even today they had some issues for sure.
True.
But yeah, I mean, the horror stories of
oh my
that
god,
kind of stuff
yeah,
is insane.
there's documentaries and it is,
and that stuff like
fucked.
That'll make me cry, like
Yes.
seeing people
Yes.
that have like mental health issues and being stuck in there. It's so awful.
If you've ever seen Cropsy or want to see Cropsy, it's hard to watch, but it's really crazy to like see that stuff and just like see how it was. It's fucked up.
Yeah, it's just very sad.
Yeah.
And on that happy note, we're going to take an ad break. Well, you know what doesn't create asylums that abuse people?
Ads. Products and services.
They might, though. But we'll see. All right, we are back. How are those ads?
So good. Scrumptious ads.
Just good old capitalism being
at its finest.
Being capitalism. Gotta love it. Anyway, back to prisons. So tuberculosis ran rampant in prisons because of the filth and vermin, which also incentivized the prisons to isolate the inmates. So, like, they would try to have them separated so they couldn't spread tuberculosis. Right. But, again, if everybody's getting tuberculosis from the prison, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, it's like... So, I mean, this was also thought to keep bad influences away, basically. Like, and this is kind of goes in... The
isolating or the tuberculosis?
The isolating.
Oh, okay.
But maybe they were like, if you got tuberculosis, it's because you deserve it.
Right.
But this kind of goes back into like the uncertainty about what it was. Like, people were pushing like, hey, we should have penitentiaries where we would send people to like live their life, because being out in society still, we don't, they would be either like a bad influence on people or be around the negativity. It's like that whole idea of like, if you want to stop like being a drug addict, you have to like take them out of the situation that they're in or whatever.
Sure.
That's kind of that idea. So they were like, yeah, we should have like a penitentiary set up where like we can send people to go get rehabilitated. Again, obviously they were very uncleanly. And that is just because America's always treated their prisoners terribly.
Exactly.
It is worth noting that the South was much more lenient on white criminals, I should specify.
Yeah.
They had, this was all happening in the North and kind of the eastern states. The South was a little bit less, there's that like stereotype of like the southern backwoods and how like, there's just nobody out there, so it's like no rules. Right. That comes from kind of like the South was much later jumping on like the prison penitentiary game. Most small crime went under the radar, or it was settled without the state's involvement. And again, a lot of like, if you come on my property, I'm going to shoot you.
Right.
Kind of vibes. After the Civil War, there began to emerge new ideas about imprisonment that were not very cash money, you could say. Overcrowding of prisons led to many more bizarre punishments to keep people in line and maintain control. Let's see here. There's some horror stories of abuse around this time after a report of one inmate being stretched to death.
Oh my God.
By the staff of a New Jersey's Trenton prison. An investigation committee found alcohol was being poured on prisoners with epilepsy.
Oh my God.
And they were lit on fire to see if the convulsions were real. And this is moving into the post-Civil War era here. But so like there was many other crimes such as electric shock, poisoning, neglect. But yeah, so like people with epilepsy, they would say like, I have epilepsy, I can't go out and do like the labor or whatever that the penitentiary was requiring. And they were like, oh, and then they would like start to convulse or have a seizure, and they would light them on fire.
Oh my fucking God.
To see if they were actually having a seizure, because I guess if the convulsions stopped and they were like, oh shit, I'm on fire, they would I don't know. Like,
that's like, I feel like that's in the same vein of like, okay, we're gonna throw you in the lake with rocks. If you drown, you're not a witch. Mm-hmm. If you don't drown, you are a witch, and then we'll kill you. So it's like either way, you like, just die.
Good stuff.
Great.
Yeah. All of the witch shit is insane.
Wild.
And it's really interesting. Again, this is another tangent.
No, we love it. We love it.
Gotta take up my time somehow.
That's why we're here.
But, like, it's insane to me because, like, I didn't realize until recently learning about, like, just that whole era of, like, accusing people of witches and whatnot, how, like, based in just, like, sexism it was.
Yeah, right?
Like, I guess I kind of knew it underneath, but, like, it was really brought to my attention with how, like, again, just awful. And women who were just, like, being... I guess, non-conformant. They were like, it sounds like you're a witch.
Witch.
Yeah. Or just calling people a witch just so they could, like, get something.
Right, yes.
But yeah, so that was the Civil War time. Moving into the late 1800s, most people didn't really care about prisoners because prisons were increasingly becoming filled with immigrants and the poor. Mm-hmm. And similar to Britain, we also hate poor people for being alive and existing. American attitudes towards the poor were heavily influenced by social Darwinism, taking the concept of survival of the fittest and applying that to a social standing, believing that if we help poor people, it will make them weaker, says Charles Loring. One of the
because that makes sense. Experts.
One of the experts.
Heavy finger quotes around that.
Charles Loring Brace was his name in the book. The Dangerous Classes of New York was the book name, and I feel like this is a kind of a sentiment that gets repeated. The idea that, like, we can't give prisoners or poor people or immigrants, anybody, like, anything because that, like, enables them is like a huge thing.
Yep. I mean, yeah, you see how people talk about, like, welfare and social security checks or whatever, and even with the COVID stimulus checks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so frustrating because, like, social Darwinism, like, the idea of it is... Not only is it, like, fucked up towards people who just genuinely have had something terrible happen to them and are having a hard time, but it's fucked up to, like, disabled people.
Right.
It's fucked up to, anybody, like, people who had terrible home lives growing up. Like, just anything. And it's so, like, narrow-minded. It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
Being like, well... the survival of the fittest, whoever can make the most money gets to survive, basically.
Exactly.
Very frustrating beliefs going on here. Mm-hmm. These views obviously led to a lot of government taking a relaxed stance on prisons and not supervising or monitoring them efficiently. Eugenics was surging at the time as well. A popular tract published in 1878 by Cesare Lomborso called L'uomo delinquent, or the criminal man. Delinquente. I don't know. Or the criminal man is what it translates to. Theorized that a criminal type existed and could be identified by physical symptoms or stigmata.
Good.
Yeah, so, like, you know, good old eugenics, good old phrenology, which also became a popular science of the time, which is the study of skull shape to decide mental ability.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, and I was going to bring up eugenics because the whole Darwinism thing goes right into that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's basically Darwinism is, like, a book to eugenics, I feel like.
Yeah, the idea of social Darwinism, I don't know. I mean, even normal Darwinism has, like, issues here and there, but, like, I get where it comes from. Like,
social Darwinism, yeah.
Yeah, I get where, like, in animal kingdoms, like, sure, the survival of the fittest, whoever gets the most food.
Right.
But that even has its own, like, stipulations. Like,
totally.
Animals that live in communities that support each other will always survive more so than ones that are solo. Things like that. But yeah, so anyway, phrenology, it's a pseudoscience that was, of course, all used to justify being as racist as possible.
Yeah.
And state and federal judges refrained from monitoring prisons properly until around the 1950s. So this was happening from, again, like the late 1800s all the way through the 1950s.
Jesus Christ.
On a federal level, they were just like, yeah. Because, even now it's like we have federal prisons and we have state prisons.
Yep.
And the state prisons were just very unregulated, which is awful. Like, the fucking, what's that, like, sociology study? The Stanford prison experiment?
That's right, yes.
It's like if you let people just run rampant with, like, power over individuals that they view are lesser beings, it's like, it's never been good.
No.
Never been good.
For sure, never been a good thing.
But that's where I'm going to call my end of the research here.
Okay.
I've hit my limit, and I will continue in part 2, but we left off there, about the late 1800s into the early 1900s, so.
Okay. Fascinating. Well, perfect. This is a great little segue into my section, which I kind of researched, like, prisons today and how they work and why they suck so bad. And most of my research, I wound up looking into private prisons, just because, like, there's just so much shit to cover with all of this. So yeah, most of my research was just in private prisons because it's fucking bananas. Yeah. This shit.
And that's probably the stipulation I should have said. Like, there's the federal prisons, and then there's, like, private state prisons that are, like, run by a specific person, or, like, they're basically like a business.
Yeah, it is. It literally is. I will get into it. So like Tayler was just saying, prisons have kind of been around since the beginning of America-ish, but private prisons became more popular in the 80s when the war on drugs happened and mass incarceration started increasing. The United States has the largest private prison population, and a quote from an article on the Sentencing Project says, quote, "Of the 1.5 million people in state and federal prisons in 2016, 8.5%, or 128,063, were incarcerated in private prisons. Another 26,249 people, 73% of all people in immigration detention, were confined in privately run facilities on a daily basis during the fiscal year of 2017. The U.S. federal government is the largest user of private prisons through the whole world.
For sure.
Yeah.
Classic, yeah.
And so if the prison populations continue the way that they are right now, where they just continue to get larger and larger, more and more people being incarcerated, privatization of prisons will most likely continue to trend upward, because, these, I take it back, I'm sorry, populations trending down, prison populations declining, because there has been a little bit of a recent-ish decline. Anyway, okay. From the 80s. My mistake, everyone. So, if this continues and the populations decline, privatization of prisons will happen because the prison industry realizes that they're losing out on money, and so they'll switch over to private prisons because you can make more money off private prisons. That was really hard for me to say for some reason. Which just the phrase prison industry really illustrates exactly why for-profit prisons are an issue. Like, the fact that you can make an industry off of this, like, that you're able to make money off of incarcerated people that you can legally pay basically nothing, and people who are literally forced to do labor. They have no way of quitting their job. They have no way of opting out of this. And so it's like, don't you think as a business owner, you would be pretty motivated to get yourself a cheap, ceaseless worker? Yes.
Yeah, and and just the idea that, like, the prisons themselves make money too. It's like they make money by having more prisoners, which
exactly
doesn't incentivize decreasing crime.
No, exactly. Well, and how are you going to get these forced labor extremely cheap workers, mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. More arrests, expensive bails, longer sentences, and of course, the law enforcement is going to prey upon these underfunded communities where people are less likely to afford lawyers, and they're more likely going to be committing petty survival crimes.
Yeah.
Because shit's fucking rough out there. A lot of people are totally clueless to how the justice system works, me included, because it makes no fucking sense. Yeah. Like, when you get really into it and, like, start looking at laws and how all this... I mean, it's crazy. And so, because of this, people get frequently stamped with higher level offenses, and because of the purposeful miseducation surrounding the judicial system, people don't realize that them or their loved one is getting charged with a higher offense than they should be.
Yeah.
Case in point was in Salt Lake City, a lot of the protesters from July 9th were facing life sentences after they poured red paint on the steps of the district attorney's offices. And their charges were increased to include a gang enhancement.
Oof.
Which it's like, it 100% was not a gang, first of all. And the term for, or like the description of gang enhancement in Utah is like very vague, open-ended. Yeah. And so you can kind of tack it onto things. And for these, like, a lot of them literally were like 19 years fucking old, that it's like, they don't know. Like, you don't know how to deal with that. And maybe you can't afford a lawyer. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing is, like, when you have to pay someone who, like, has devoted a huge chunk of their life just to learning how this system works.
This crazy system.
And it's like, but, you know, it's like, yeah, you have the right to an attorney, but, like, I don't know. I know there's, like, issues with, like, state-appointed attorneys.
Totally. Not
always being to the same level as, like, hiring a private attorney. And
right.
It's, there's a lot of shit.
There definitely is. So another quote from the Sentencing Project says, federal prisons incarcerated the largest number of people in private prisons, 34,159, making a 120% increase since 2000. And the largest private prison corporations, called Core Civic and GEO Group, collectively manage over half of the private prison contracts in the United States, with combined revenues of $3.5 billion as of 2015.
Ew. Fuck
Ew,
them,
indeed.
Dude. Like, $3.5 billion on incarcerating people? Like...
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So gross.
It's, and not only are the actual prisoners being taken advantage of, but the staff at private prisons as well. Private prisons are much more likely to hire non-union workers as well as workers from disadvantaged communities, and this allows them room to give low wages and minimal benefits. And obviously I'm not, like, sympathizing with prison guards too much, but this is just another huge example of how the prison industrial complex takes advantage of people and just squeezes every last cent out at all possible angles.
Yeah, and especially, like, when there's a community that has, like, not many job opportunities. It's like, if there's a correctional facility there, and it's like, you either work at the Walmart or the prison, right?
Like, and the training, I have it somewhere in my notes here, it might be in part 2, but the training to become a prison guard is like 3 weeks long.
Ugh, yeah.
And so you get through that quick, and you start working quick, and you get that money quick. No matter, regardless of how little the pay is, if you need a fucking job, you need a fucking job.
It's true. That's almost, it's a little bit shorter than police training.
Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? So in 2016, during the Obama administration, there was legislation being worked on to end contracts with for-profit prisons. But in 2017, our BFF, Jeff Sessions, who was the Attorney General at the time, he changed courses and said that private prisons would aid in the, quote, future needs of the federal correctional system. Read, Jeff Sessions wanted to use money derived from basically free labor of prisoners.
Yeah. Friend of the pod, Jeff Sesh.
Friend of the Jeff Sesh. Jizzy Slizzlers.
Jizzy Sizzlers? Our boy.
So soon after this plan was set into motion, prosecutors were urged to charge the harshest and longest possible sentences on all federal crimes. Because, of course.
Because they want to make more money.
Yeah, exactly. So,
evil shit.
It's evil. It's so... So, let's talk money a little bit more. As I said, private prisons obviously earn more income based on the amount of people incarcerated in their facilities. And as we know, because of this, there's a higher motivation to get as many people in prison as possible for as long as possible. So enter stage right, ALEC, ALEC. You might have heard of this acronym before. ALEC stands for the American Legislative Exchange Council. This group is on some fuck shit, like to the degree of FOPs, I feel like.
Yeah, you were telling me about them.
I was losing my fucking mind. It's so evil. Okay, so ALEC is a non-profit, LOL, conglomeration of private prison companies, lawmakers, corporations, and other asshole investors who quote-unquote advocate for private prisons. Through ALEC, corporations can purchase a seat on these task forces where they'll vote on legislation. And it's not just prisons. They cover a bunch of stupid fucking shit, but a lot of it is prisons.
They can fucking bank off of it.
Yeah. So ALEC believes in advancing, Tayler, you're going to love this, quote, the Jeffersonian principles of free markets, limited government, federalism, and individual liberty.
The fuck? I mean...
I know.
My God, yeah.
Like, it's unreal.
It's libertarian shit. Like, there's a bunch of fucking libertarians. Like, it's so...
I was waiting for you to say that. It seriously is, and this is why we don't like libertarians, you guys. Fuck.
Yeah, it's like, I get it, yeah. Fuck the government, but also...
But, like, fuck the government in the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, libertarians are just, like, anti-government capitalists.
They are, and they're just like, they're like Republicans, but they smoke weed and want the age of consent to be lowered.
And they're not even like that. They're like not even that like anti-government, to be quite honest, because they're like in support of cops and shit too.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. For them, it's gross.
Yeah. Anyway, we don't need to talk about libertarians today. So, again, these people are capitalizing off the lives of imprisoned people who have no choice of opting out of this job. Which tell me why fucking incarceration is a business at all. And this just seems like a huge conflict of interest to me, because if the people profiting off incarcerations and the people responsible for the arrests that lead to that incarceration are in cahoots, doesn't that seem like, I don't know, a police state or like just straight up fascism?
It's a little fashy.
A little fashy.
It's like, I feel like this whole organization is just like movie villain shit. Like,
it seriously is. Tayler, it gets worse. Okay. So another one of ALEC's goals is privatization of basically all government functions, full privatization across the board of all government facilities and services. So two of the main prison companies that I mentioned earlier, CoreCivic and GEO Group, are responsible for a large portion of the funding to ALEC, and they've hosted events where they basically would bribe legislators.
Yeah.
CoreCivic and GEO Group also worked with ALEC to draft up legislation for the privatization of prisons and reform on sentencing. Included in this legislation was a push for mandatory minimum sentences, 3 strikes law, and truth in sentencing. What those things are: mandatory minimum sentences is that the court must sentence a person convicted of a crime to a prison sentence no matter what. So if somebody comes into the court having been convicted of a crime, they have to receive some kind of prison sentence.
Like the judge can't be like, you're good.
Yeah, or like pay a fine or do public, what do they call that? Community service.
Community service, yeah.
You have to have a prison sentence. So this is something that ALEC
is trying to get.
Mm-hmm, this is one of their like big
obviously, because community service doesn't help. That helps the community? Fuck
Disgusting.
Them, dude. Gross. We want to make fucking money. Also, this is a random thought, but I very much think it's funny that it's called ALEC, and like I hope that someone listening's name is ALEC, and they're like, "Hey, what the fuck, dude?"
You're like, "Hey guys, I'm a nice guy.
I'm all right."
Before I get into the other two pieces of legislation, let's take a nice relaxing ad break.
Yeah, let's relax from the horrors of the prison of ALEC, our boy.
You know, it won't conglomerate to take over the entire prison industry and turn it into a giant business corporation.
I don't know if you can.
Maybe?
You can guarantee that, Phoebe.
I'm not.
I mean, I can from our one advertisement, but
yes.
Capitalism in general?
No.
Nah, can't say that for sure.
Anyway, products and services.
All right, we're back. Just talking about how politics are weird when you're going on dates with people.
Yeah. It's always an interesting first conversation where you're like, I despise this country and everything about it. How do you feel?
You're like, I ideally want to get killed in a guerrilla war against the state in a couple years, so I can't make any long-term commitments.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh, God. So anyway, let's get back into legislation that Alec has been pushing for, which was minimum sentences, 3 strikes law, and truth in sentencing. We covered... We covered mandatory minimum sentences. So 3 strikes law. A 3 strikes law says that a person who has been convicted of a violent felony, who has also had 2 other prior convictions, will receive a mandatory life sentences. Which, as I had said prior, Jeff Sessions, the man, had been urging prosecutors to charge people with higher offenses, meaning that the number of convicted felons increased. And so if any of those people justly or unjustly convicted with a violent felony have also had 2 other prior convictions of any kind, they will be charged with a life sentence. That's 3 strikes law. Yeah, it is insane.
So you do 3, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's like, it doesn't matter if your other one was like, you were drunk and you peed outside or whatever, and now you have, whatever that thing is. And then maybe you shoplifted from a convenience store. If you have, you then get a violent felony charge, whether that's really what it was or not, life sentence.
Yeah, anytime there's any kind of like blanket law that's put on to like anything really, it's like there's always gonna be people that are fucked over by that.
Exactly.
And I hate it.
Yeah, people that take advantage and people that get taken advantage of with that.
It's awful.
It is. The last one, truth in sentencing. Truth in sentencing. I cannot fucking talk today. Good thing I have a podcast. Truth in sentencing is a set of policies and legislation that work to cut out or completely abolish parole. This name comes from the argument that the public has a quote-unquote right to know, and that if a person sentenced to 5 years in prison only serves 4, it's dishonest. Which,
Okay, so Okay, I'm trying to understand. So if somebody... Because I know you can get out on, like, parole and things.
Sure.
Like, so they have to tell the public that?
No, so basically so if you get sentenced to 5 years in prison, and then like you were saying, you get parole, or you get early release because you're good
behavior,
they don't want you to be able to do that. They want to abolish parole and abolish early sentencing so that you would have to serve the full sentence, whatever it was that they said it would be in court. Because if you're not serving that full sentence, it's dishonest to the public, I guess.
I guess, but like... Okay, I get what they're saying there in the sense that, like, I guess it's dishonest, but also the majority of people that get let out on parole and, like, good behavior are usually, like, rich assholes who get put in, like, 2 years of a 20-year sentence or some shit like that.
Right, exactly.
If they even do time at all. It's like... Yep. Because we know that rich people, rich white men, typically, will avoid prison...
Yes.
9 out of 10 times.
Exactly. Well, and you know that these fucking people on this ALEC board have done certain, like, I'm sure that they've embezzled. I'm sure that they've, like, solicited sex work. I'm sure that they've, fucking smoked weed or whatever. And if they ever got in a situation where they were going to be convicted, they would pay their way out of it. You know. Like, exactly. You know they would. So it's just bananas that they fucking do this shit. Ugh. So a lot of times... Truth in sentencing and the 3 strikes law goes hand in hand, pushing the prosecutor not only to convict the person to a life sentence, but also strip that person of parole rights, forcing them to carry out the entire life sentence.
Yeah.
So, you're basically just thrown in prison forever. Legislators who are members of ALEC work alongside corporations and other members to write up policies that the members in politics will then take and they introduce to their state houses. The catch is that all of the corporate involvement is under the table. So no one outside of ALEC who may vote in favor of this legislation knows that the corporations were pulling the strings. Which, like, I think you're still pretty shitty if you're going to vote for the type of legislation that ALEC members vote for, but still, this contradicts their whole right to know bit from earlier.
Yeah.
Like, I think I have a right to know that corporations are fucking paying you to push this legislation.
Yeah. And all the backdoor deals that happen and shit, like, it's so frustrating. Right. So infuriating.
Well, and as I mentioned, there's members of ALEC sitting on task forces who are voting for this legislation. They've got fucking plants in the crowd. Like, it's all a fucking conspiracy. So ALEC introduces over 1,000 bills a year, and 1 in 5 of these bills are passed each year.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Corporate members of ALEC pay a yearly membership fee anywhere from $7,000 to $25,000, and many corporations, no surprises here, like ExxonMobil, fund ALECs with grants. And ExxonMobil donated a grant of $1.4 million from 1998 to 2000.
Love it.
Yep, so great.
ExxonMobil.
Good old oil companies.
Oil companies, not
based, very cringe.
Not based, very cringe, killing the planet.
Yep.
But
killing us all.
Not only are they killing the planet, the remarks guarantee and the oil companies guarantee is that they will also make it so that you are imprisoned on the planet that they're killing. So,
exactly.
What else could you ask for?
Exactly. This is, I guess, a fun little tidbit. So some of the billionaire CEO-owned corporation that give grants to ALECs are the Charles G. Is it Koch? Koch?
Koch, yeah.
Koch Foundation.
Although we can call it Koch.
Koch.
It is Koch, though. The Koch brothers, yeah.
Yeah. So the Charles G. Koch Foundation, the Claude R. Land Foundation, which is managed by the Koch family, Coors, and the Castle Rock Foundation. Because, of course, some weird beer company has to be involved for whatever reason. A few of our faves on the list of people ALEC has given awards to includes Ronald Reagan.
Oof.
Margaret Thatcher.
Oof.
Yeah, it's a winning list. George H.W. Bush.
Damn, the dream team right there.
Yeah, oh yeah. David Koch, Rick Perry, and Congressman Mark Foley.
Oof. That's like the Avengers of libertarianism, libertarian capitalism.
Oh my god, for real though.
The Koch brothers are so fucked up.
I know.
I remember there was this weird story that I remember from them where they were purposefully not following government pollution regulation.
Yeah.
And they were fined it would have taken them $7 million or something to update their machinery to not pollute as much.
Oh my god.
And then they got fined way more than that, but they still just didn't do it because on principle they were we shouldn't be told what to do by the government. We can pollute however much we want.
God.
And it's
my god.
Infuriating.
Yikes. Past members of ALEC has been winners such as former Vice President Mike Pence. Surprise there. And keynote speakers at ALEC gatherings have been all-stars like Newt Gingrich, Dick Cheney, and Pete Coors.
All my favorite people. Dick
Love
Cheney.
Them.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney, winner. Absolute winner right there.
If Dick Cheney and David Koch
David Koch got together.
Koch had a gay adopted love child. Dick Koch.
Dick Koch. Okay, a couple more things about ALEC because it's just so mind-blowingly evil. So ALEC, funded by these corporations, will take legislators on these lavish, all-expenses-paid vacations where they can bring their whole family. It happens every year. And at these conventions, they are offered these huge parties, decadent food, meetings with high-profile CEOs, 5-star hotels, and they even get reimbursed for visits to strip clubs.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a story of this legislator and her husband went to a strip club and ALEC literally covered it. So, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Just a couple of the industries that have benefited from ALEC bills are Altria, Philip Morris USA, tobacco companies, health insurance like Humana and United, pharmaceuticals like Bayer, and another tobacco company like Reynolds has saved loads of money from an ALEC bill that made it more difficult to sue when people had been injured by some of these companies' products.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Bayer, the Nazi company,
yeah,
they were the German company that
Fuck.
hella helped Nazis. I think because they're pharmaceuticals, right?
Yep, they are. Yeah. God damn.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Corrections Corporation of America benefited from an anti-immigration bill that required expanded incarceration of immigrants. Yeah.
Yep.
So, of course, CoreCivic and GEO Group, the private prison corporations that I've mentioned, they had a lot to gain from Alec's privatization bills. And so in 2016, when the Obama administration had promised to work on phasing out private prisons, stock in private prison companies dropped 50%. Which, can we just talk for a minute how insane it is that you can effectively own stock in a prison? Like, what the fuck?
Ooh.
Yeah. So the CEO Corrections Corporation of America, the company that made money off of the anti-immigration bills, decided that they needed a rebranding, and they changed the company's name to CoreCivic, which is the one I've been talking about.
Yeah.
And they said that the change was necessary because rather than being, quote, largely corrections and detention services, they were a company that had, quote, a wider range of government solutions. Yeah.
But are being funded by Alec, which wants there to only be correction facilities.
Yes, they are one of the two companies that owns the largest number of private prisons, which together with GEO Group made over $3.5 billion in 2015.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another quote from the Sentencing Project says, private prison companies have contributed millions to President Trump's campaign and associated super PACs. Moreover, at least one prison company appears to be acting in the personal financial interest of President Trump. GEO Group changed the location of its annual meeting from a resort in Boca Raton, Florida, to the Trump National Doral Golf Club in Miami. This club is reported to be the single biggest contributor to Trump's cash flow.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. And see, what's so frustrating is it's like this kind of shit, like these Illuminati conspiracy anti-Semitic motherfuckers.
Yeah.
It's like this kind of shit actually, and we've kind of said this before, like it does happen. Mm-hmm. It's just not in the way that you think it's happening. Like,
right.
This is a big collusion of fucking rich assholes and politicians that are like, let's imprison the public, like literally doing what you're like scared that, you know, the Illuminati's doing.
Right.
But because they're all like not fascists and right wingers, it's like you're gonna be like, nah, this is fine.
Exactly.
And it's like, the fuck you mean?
And it's just like, it's just like the thing with QAnon too. I'm like, you guys are so close. Are you like kind of on the right track? You understand the basic like umbrella thing of it, but like the avenue you go down is like, no. It's like there's one path that's like leads to this like beautiful oasis, and the other path is like scary, dark vampire castles, and they're like that one.
Yeah, like that fucking car meme where it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Fucking anarcho-leftist, and then it's like skirt to like QAnon conspiracies.
Yeah. So CoreCivic and GEO Group have absorbed other companies as well, adding to their empire of imprisonment. In 2011, CoreCivic bought BI Incorporated, which is an ankle monitor company.
Jeez.
Yeah, and both GEO Group and CoreCivic provide prison healthcare services. They own halfway houses and own several immigration centers, which I'll talk next week about how horrible prison healthcare services are. GEO Group purchased the Alabama Therapeutic Education Facility, which provides training, drug rehabilitation, and oversees formerly incarcerated people's reentry into society. For sure, nothing could go wrong with that ever, right?
Absolutely not.
An incarceration group owning a reentry to society place where they literally profit off of keeping people in prison. Mm-hmm. Wonder what kind of training that is.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say good training.
I'm gonna say it's A+. Another awful part about private prisons is that states which don't have private prisons have a large incentive to ship prisoners out to states that do, because the cost of building a state-run facility as well as a higher financial gain from a privately run facility. And so this leads to incarcerated people being separated from their families, which obviously ends in little to no visitation from the incarcerated loved ones. Family separation is extremely detrimental to a person serving a sentence. Of course, they become depressed, they lose a sense of connection, and they're going to have a much harder time reintegrating into society once their sentence is up, because the only other people they've been spending time with is people who are also suffering in the same way that they are. And they don't get to know anything, you know, they don't get updates from their family about what's going on outside. So, yeah. On top of the isolation from loved ones, when prisoners are sent out of state, and this is honestly like, I don't know, more fucked up. It's all fucked up. But when prisoners are sent out of state, it makes it much harder for their public defenders to work on their case. which is, like, honestly, I don't understand how that can be fucking legal.
It shouldn't be.
No. Because if you can find a way...
in your Miranda rights or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
yes!
Random rights.
Like, if you can find a way to justify tearing people away from their families and making visitation nearly impossible, fine, I guess. But how are you justifying messing with a legal matter? Like, how are you separating a person involved in a legal case from the very person working on that case?
Yeah, and again, and all these, like, right-wing people who are so into, like, your personal rights and stuff, but, again, it comes down to, like, they don't care about personal rights for poor people, for people of minorities. That's what it is. It's like the rights they care about only extend to what can make them more money.
Yeah, and exactly. Well, and, like, I just have a real issue with like the way that America instills, like, individual freedoms, because I just feel like the individuality, quote unquote, of these freedoms is, like, the individual freedom to, like, oppress people more. Like, that's really what it is. And it, like, completely ignores that certain freedoms are counterintuitive to, like, the collective freedom of the community.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's actually interesting. This is another tangent, so I apologize.
Here we go.
There is, like, a kind of this weird thing that I was reading about with, like, a lot of anarchist groups and stuff is, like, I heard it referred to as, like, the freedom paradox. It might have another name as well, but, like, basically the post I was reading was about, like, circumcision for children and how, like, should it be a parent's right to, like, circumcise a child or, like, you know, cut their skin off if they don't consent to it,
right?
You know, and it's like, so at what point is it, like, a parent's freedom more than, like, a child's freedom or whatever? And it's like, to ensure the safety of a community and the freedom of everybody, there is certain freedoms you have to give up, which is why it's called, like, the freedom paradox.
Right.
But again, like, the freedoms that you do have should be ones that everybody has to the betterment of society, kind of a thing, the community.
Like, your freedom shouldn't be that, like, I'm not going to allow gay people in my restaurant. Like, the freedom should be everybody is free to patronize whatever restaurant they fucking want, regardless of their race, sexuality, what have you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like, the I don't know. You shouldn't have the freedom to just go out and, you know, murder people who you want to. Yeah. Everybody has the right and the freedom to live. Yeah. To have a life that in safety. Like, yeah. It's a thing.
It is a thing. So yeah, which this whole thing about, like, people being incarcerated, being shipped out states away to these private facilities, and then they're separated from their legal worker is bullshit. I mean, for multiple reasons, but, like, when a person is involved in a legal case, if they cross state lines, it's considered fleeing. Yeah. And is illegal. So it's like, how the fuck are you allowed to flee somebody oh like, against their will to flee them? Which, again, just a shining example of how this justice system continually contradicts itself.
Just a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah, it is. It's completely hypocritical. So that's my piece for today. Next week I'll get a little bit more into what happens inside of prisons, and more specifically what happens in private prisons.
Fuck yeah, dude.
So there we go. That's our nice, fun, lighthearted episode.
Lighthearted part 1.
Yeah.
On Twitter, the podcast is Remarks Pod. You can follow us there. I tweet out thoughts.
It's nice. I like it a lot. Follow us on Instagram at Remarks Podcast. Comment on our shit. Look at our posts. We'll post pictures and stuff. And then our TikTok is the same at Remarks Podcast. You can watch our TikTok videos and make them go viral.
Please. And then I have a YouTube channel called The Lefty Agenda. You can check out some more scripted videos there. And I was thinking for the shout out game.
Yes.
Because no one commented last week, so sorry, no shout-outs.
Fuckers.
But I was thinking, as a way to make it a little bit more lighthearted, to end it off here, comment your pet's name First person to comment the name of your pet will get a shout out.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing to kind of heal our hearts after this.
I agree.
I wish that it was like you could post a picture as well, but...
No, you can on Instagram.
Yeah.
You could tweet a picture on Twitter if you wanted to.
Yes, if you get on Twitter, we want your pet's name and a picture if you so wish, because who doesn't want to look at cute pets?
It's true. It really helps get through the existential crisis.
Helps you deal with the capitalist overlords.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, that's part 1.
Beautiful. Stay tuned for next week. Okay, love you. Bye.